The bell clanged, and silence swallowed my classroom. I should have been grading essays, but my eyes froze on a name painted across a coffee mug: Rachel. My wife. My anchor. Except now, that name burned like a warning. Because 6 days ago, my best friend told me something I can't forget. He swore he saw her. Not once, twice. Laughing. Touching. With someone who wasn't me. I told myself it was a mistake. But then came the lies. The late nights. The perfume that wasn't mine. And now every look, every word, every smile feels like a performance. She thinks I don't know. But I do. The only question is, what happens when I finally stop pretending? The bell above my classroom door gave its usual rusty clatter as my last student left for the day. I stayed seated behind my desk, the echo of her footsteps fading down the hallway. It was a quiet Friday afternoon, the kind that usually promised a weekend of rest and routine. I should have been thinking about lesson plans or grading essays on The Great Gatsby, but instead, I stared blankly at a single name etched on a coffee mug by my elbow: Rachel. My wife had given it to me last year on our anniversary. Hand-painted, custom-ordered. She had insisted on calling it a little thing, but I remember how much effort she had put into it. Or maybe I just wanted to believe she had. Now, looking at it felt like glancing into a window that had slowly frosted over, still see-through, just barely, but colder every day. That was before Greg came to see me. Greg has been my best friend since college. We bonded over poker games, late-night debates about Nietzsche, and mutual loathing of bad coffee. He's the kind of man who never speaks unless he's sure of his words. Analytical, almost annoyingly precise. I trusted him with everything, which is why his visit last weekend caught me off guard. We were in my garage, tinkering with my old record player. He was cleaning the stylus when he asked, without looking up, "You and Rachel doing okay?" It sounded casual, but Greg wasn't one for idle chit-chat. "We're fine," I said. He nodded once, then paused. "Because I think she's seeing someone else." I let out a short laugh. It was instinctive, defensive. "What the hell are you talking about?" Greg finally looked up. I wasn't going to say anything, but I saw her. Twice, actually. Not just talking. Holding hands with someone outside that art gallery on 3rd. "You're mistaken," I said quickly. "You must have seen someone else. Rachel's not like that." His eyes didn't waver. "You know I wouldn't bring this up if I wasn't sure." I didn't say anything after that. I walked him to the front door, nodded, and watched him get in his car and drive off. Not another word exchanged. That was 6 days ago. Since then, I've been watching, quietly, carefully. I'm not the type to jump to conclusions. Rachel and I have been married 12 years. She's always been affectionate, consistent, and supportive through every stage of my teaching career, even during the long nights of thesis grading and curriculum meetings. But now there were cracks. Little things. She used to kiss me before leaving for work. Lately, she just mumbles a quick goodbye and heads out with her phone in hand. She used to ask me about my classes. Now, her eyes drift during dinner. She smiles, but the smile doesn't reach her eyes. Tuesday night, I woke up around 1 a.m. to find her standing in the kitchen with the refrigerator door open, staring into it like she was lost. She flinched when I called her name. "It's nothing," she said, and went back to bed without taking anything. She's been different, distant, or maybe I've just been blind for too long. What troubled me most was not Greg's certainty or even the changes in Rachel's behavior. What haunted me was a single sentence he had muttered as he reached for his keys, almost to himself. She didn't look surprised to be seen. That stuck with me. That wasn't the behavior of a woman making a mistake. That was the behavior of someone who had already come to terms with her disloyalty. Still, I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not without knowing more. I believe in evidence, in understanding before action. I'm a teacher, after all. My job is to observe, evaluate, and guide. But now I was the one needing answers, and all I had were shadows. So I waited. I started noticing her calendar more carefully, the clothes she chose on specific days, the scent of a cologne that wasn't mine clinging faintly to her scarf. But nothing definitive. No smoking gun. Not yet. But something was wrong. Deeply wrong. I could feel it. And still, a part of me hoped Greg had been mistaken. Because if he wasn't, it wouldn't just be my marriage on the line. It would be everything I believed about loyalty, friendship, and love. And worst of all, I might not be ready to find out the truth. There's a strange kind of silence that creeps in when doubt takes root. Not louder, just heavier. Our house had always been quiet, the peaceful kind. But now, the silence felt watchful, almost like it was waiting for something. Rachel came home late Monday night. She said she had to stay behind for a project. I nodded, but her explanation didn't match her eyes. They darted to her phone, then back to me. She smiled, wide, rehearsed. "How was your day?" she asked. I shrugged. "Quiet." She leaned in and gave me a kiss. It landed on my cheek and left nothing behind. Not warmth, not affection, not even presence. It was the same kind of kiss you'd give a stranger out of politeness. Later, she went straight to the shower, again. Lately, she'd been showering as soon as she got home, like she needed to wash something off. And her phone came with her. She never used to do that. I remembered what Greg said. She didn't look surprised to be seen. That one sentence haunted me. He'd caught her holding hands with someone. Twice. And she didn't look alarmed, just prepared. Still, I hadn't confronted her. I needed more than a bad feeling. I needed truth. Tuesday afternoon, I tried calling her office. Jenna, her assistant, picked up. "Oh, Rachel left after lunch," she said. Said she wasn't feeling well. But Rachel came home at her usual time, same clothes, same routine. She never mentioned leaving early. When I asked how her day went, she replied, "Busy. Meetings all day." That was the moment I knew something was happening. But still, no proof. Just a lie she didn't think I'd notice. That night, I lay awake. Rachel was beside me, facing the wall, typing rapidly on her phone. Her fingers danced across the screen like she was on autopilot. The light from her screen painted soft blue lines on the wall. She didn't speak, just typed, then turned the screen off and went still. The next day, I started watching more carefully. Not obsessively, just noting the details. Her sudden fondness for checking her phone during meals. The new perfume, something darker, heavier, not what she usually wore. When I asked, she said, "Oh, someone at work gave it to me." Then she added, "It's not really me." She was right about that. By Thursday, I'd had enough. I took a half day and parked across the street from her office around noon. I wasn't spying. I just needed to see. At 12:47, she came out. She wasn't alone. He was tall, clean-shaven, well-dressed. The kind of guy you'd see in an ad for cologne. They didn't touch, but they moved like people who knew each other well. Rachel laughed at something he said. It wasn't flirty, it was familiar. They turned the corner and walked into a parking garage together. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. When she got home that night, she smiled at me the way someone smiles at an old photo. Fond, distant, disconnected. Her hair was damp again. She'd used that same perfume. She told me about her day like nothing happened. I listened. I nodded. I smiled where I was supposed to. We even had dinner together. Pasta, wine, some forced laughter over a joke I made about one of my students misquoting Hamlet. For a second, I wanted to believe we were still us. But that version of us was long gone. I sat across from her and tried to picture the last time we'd truly looked at each other, not just seen each other. Nothing came. And yet, I said nothing. I didn't confront her. I didn't raise my voice or demand answers. I just watched and waited, because if the truth was coming, I wanted to be ready. Friday morning arrived like any other. Early, gray, unassuming. Rachel made coffee. I toasted bread. We exchanged soft, good mornings that sounded almost like apologies. The silence in between us, though, said everything else. She left the house in a beige coat she hadn't worn in years. "Felt like switching things up," she said. I nodded and told her to drive safe. When the door closed, I stood there, still holding my coffee, staring at the space where she'd been standing. Later that day, I met Greg at the park, where we often went to decompress after work. He didn't say much, just handed me a cup of black coffee and waited. "She left work early again on Tuesday," I said quietly. "Didn't tell me." Greg didn't respond immediately. He sipped his drink, watching a few kids kick a soccer ball down the hill. Finally, he said, "You believe me now?" "I don't disbelieve you," I replied. "But I need more than a hunch. More than coincidence." "She's lying to you, Mike." I know. It was the first time I admitted it out loud. It didn't feel like a revelation, more like a resignation. We talked a bit more, mostly about nothing. That was Greg's way. He never pushed. He let silence work its way into understanding. That night, I offered to cook. Rachel seemed surprised, but didn't question it. As I chopped vegetables, she sat at the kitchen island scrolling through her phone. "You're quiet today," she said. "So are you," I replied. She gave a small, uneasy laugh. Guess we're both tired. I served the stir-fry, and we ate in relative silence. At one point, I noticed she kept her phone face down beside her plate. She used to set it upright, like she had nothing to hide. Later, as she rinsed her dish, I asked her a simple question. Who's Liam? She turned slowly, blinking. What? Liam, I said. You mentioned him in your sleep last night. She paused. Oh, he's from work. He's new. I must have been dreaming about the project team. I said nothing, just nodded. But I hadn't heard her say Liam in her sleep. I had made the name up. She had taken the bait anyway. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside her, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Her breathing was slow, steady, peaceful. Mine wasn't. Saturday morning, she left early, saying she had a team brunch. It was a phrase that didn't fit her usual vocabulary. I didn't ask who else was going. She didn't offer. I stayed home and worked on my lecture notes for the following week. But I couldn't concentrate. Every few minutes, I looked out the window, half expecting her to come back with an excuse. She didn't. By late afternoon, she returned, humming softly under her breath, cheeks flushed, smelling again of that musky perfume. She was holding a new book, the kind we used to pick out together. You bought something? I asked. Oh yeah, she said lightly. Stopped by the bookstore. Thought I'd pick up something new. I smiled. Nice to see you reading again. Figured I'd get back into it, she said, and walked past me. Only, I had been to that same bookstore that morning. They were closed for renovations. I didn't mention it. Not then. Not yet. Later that night, she was curled on the couch with her book, still unread, still with the receipt inside. I sat beside her, pretending to scroll through my emails. She leaned her head on my shoulder. For a moment, it felt familiar. Warm. But I knew now. Whatever this was, whatever we were clinging to, it was a performance. And she was getting better at it. Sunday morning came quietly, as most do in our neighborhood. No traffic. Just birdsong and the sound of lawn sprinklers kicking to life. Rachel made pancakes. She hummed as she cooked, wearing one of my old college t-shirts, the way she used to back when we were new and real. Want blueberries or plain? She asked. Plain's fine, I said. She smiled and slid a stack onto my plate. Her performance was flawless. It almost made me forget. Almost. I watched her over the rim of my coffee mug. She was cheerful, present, even affectionate. But I'd seen the gaps now. I couldn't unsee them. After breakfast, I pretended to do yard work while she took a call in the upstairs bedroom. She hadn't realized the window was open. Her voice drifted out, low and fast, the kind you use when you're trying to be secretive but still smiling. No, he doesn't know, she said. Then, a pause. I'll see you Tuesday. I clipped the same hedge 3 times. When she came down later, she looked serene. Her phone was in her back pocket, screen down. She kissed my cheek as she passed, smelling like gardenia this time. Another new perfume. I'm heading to the store, she said. Need anything? Nothing I can think of. She smiled and grabbed her purse. As the door clicked shut, I pulled out my phone and opened a notepad. Tuesday. I didn't know what would happen Tuesday, but she had circled it. That evening, I asked her if she wanted to rewatch one of our old movies. We had a tradition of watching The Illusionist every fall. I pulled it up without waiting for her answer. She hesitated. Maybe another time. I'm kind of tired. That was when I knew something inside her had shut off. She couldn't even pretend to care about the traditions we used to hold sacred. They'd become burdens, reminders of what we no longer were. That night, as we lay in bed, I looked at her. I studied her profile, the soft rise and fall of her chest, her hand curled near her face. She looked peaceful, maybe even innocent. But I no longer believed in that version of her. Not fully. What I saw now was a woman holding 2 lives in her hands. One she wore like a well-practiced smile, and one she slipped into when she thought no one was looking. I found myself wondering not just who he was, but who she was with him. Was she softer with him? Bolder? Did he know about me? Did he care? These questions stayed with me the next day. At school, I taught Shakespeare, but I might as well have been reading the dictionary aloud. My mind wasn't there. During my lunch break, I walked the halls of the faculty building and found myself stopping outside the guidance counselor's office. Mrs. Eaton, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with a voice like gravel and eyes that missed nothing. She looked up as I passed. Everything all right, Mike? She asked. I stopped. Almost told her. Almost. But I just nodded and said, yeah, just a long week. She didn't believe me. I could tell. But she let it go. That evening, Rachel brought home takeout. My favorite place. Thai food. Pad CEW, extra chili. I figured you had a long day, she said, handing me the bag. I did, I said. We sat down and ate quietly. Her phone buzzed twice during dinner, but she didn't check it. That was new. A show of discipline? Or guilt? You seem tired, I said between bites. She gave me a look. You've said that twice this week. Just noticing. I'm fine, she said quickly. Too quickly. Then smiled again. Really? I wanted to tell her that I had been fine too, once. But I didn't. Instead, I cleaned up the dishes and kissed her forehead. She froze for half a second before returning the gesture. That was when I knew. Even a kiss had become theater. Tuesday was coming. And with it, maybe the answer I wasn't sure I wanted, but couldn't avoid any longer. Tuesday started like every other day. The alarm buzzed at 6:30. Rachel turned it off without a word. She rose, showered, and dressed quickly. A navy blouse, fitted jeans, the small gold earrings she usually wore to formal events. She curled her hair. Light makeup. Perfume, floral this time. She was trying to look effortless. She never looked effortless without effort. Big meeting today? I asked, trying to sound casual. Sort of, she replied, sipping coffee. Vendor review. Might run long. Vendor review. She worked in marketing. There were always vendors. And yet, the term sounded pulled from a script she'd rehearsed before stepping into the kitchen. Well, good luck, I said. She gave me a quick kiss and left. No warmth. No hesitation. Just habit. I checked my watch. 7:53 a.m. She would normally leave around 8:15. She was early. Too early for traffic. At school, I moved through my classes in a fog. Even my senior literature students noticed. Rough morning, Mr. Hartley? One asked. I offered a weak smile. Just one of those days. But I wasn't really there. I kept thinking about what she'd said. I'll see you Tuesday. At lunch, I sat in the teacher's lounge with a sandwich I didn't touch. I checked my phone. No messages from Rachel. She always sent one, even a short one. A meme. A heart. Something. Today, nothing. By 3 o'clock, school let out, and I walked to my car slower than usual. The sky was heavy with clouds, a drizzle misting down like the weather knew how I felt. I sat in my car and thought about Greg's words again. She didn't look surprised. Neither was I anymore. I drove to the place I'd parked before, across from her office. But today, I parked a block away and approached on foot. No camera. No disguise. Just me. I stood behind a coffee kiosk with a decent view of the entrance. At 4:12, she emerged. Not alone. Same man. Crisp blazer. Relaxed gait. He was holding a canvas bag slung over one shoulder, and Rachel was laughing. Not politely. Freely. Her eyes crinkled at the corners, her hand brushing his arm as they talked. I watched them walk toward a side street, heads close, steps aligned. I followed, staying behind parked cars. They reached a small wine bar tucked between two boutiques. I knew it. One of those quiet places with dim lights and corner booths. Rachel and I had been there once, years ago. She'd called it too pretentious. They stepped inside. I stood on the sidewalk, unsure what I was doing. I hadn't planned to confront her. I didn't want a scene. But seeing her like that, so alive, so engaged, it stung. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was how easily she gave someone else what she'd stopped giving me. I waited 15 minutes, maybe more. Then I walked in. The host barely looked up. Table for one? I nodded, eyes scanning the room. There, in the corner, partially hidden by a partition. Rachel. And him. They weren't touching, but their bodies leaned inward. Her smile was soft, her hand wrapped around a wine glass. His posture was relaxed, confident. He looked at her like she was the only person in the world. And she let him. She hadn't seen me. I stood there a few seconds longer. Long enough to be sure. Then I turned and walked out. That night, when she came home, she was glowing. Flushed cheeks, light in her voice. She said dinner had gone late with the vendors. I didn't challenge her. Instead, I said, "You look happy." She froze for a moment, then smiled. It was just a productive day. I nodded. I didn't need proof anymore. I had seen enough. The hardest part wasn't what I saw. It was pretending I hadn't seen it. Rachel went to bed early that night. She said she had a migraine. I said nothing. I just stood in the kitchen, sipping water in the dark, listening to the faint creak of floorboards above me. Our house felt unfamiliar, like I was a guest overstaying my welcome. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smile. The real one, the one she used to give me, and now it was someone else's. Wednesday morning, I told myself I would keep things normal, professional, but I failed before I even left the house. Rachel had left her scarf on the kitchen chair. It smelled like her new perfume, not the one she wore for me, the one she wore for him. That scent had a name now. It wasn't just different. It was his. At school, I kept my head down, taught my lessons, gave out quizzes, but everything came out of me like I was reading lines from a bad play. Hollow. Forced. I made eye contact with my students, nodded, smiled, but I was somewhere else the entire time. During my prep period, I walked out to the courtyard. I sat alone, staring at the bare trees and listening to the distant hum of students laughing at something I would never hear. Greg called that evening. "Anything you want to talk about?" he asked, knowing the answer. "She was with him," I said. Silence. Wine bar. Tuesday afternoon. "You okay?" "No." "You want to come by?" "No." I said again, quieter this time. "But thank you." After we hung up, I went upstairs. Rachel was in bed with her book, still unread from last week. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, how was work?" "Quiet," I said. She waited a second longer, maybe expecting more. When nothing came, she went back to her book. I walked into the bathroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the tub. My reflection in the mirror looked older, duller, like I was already starting to fade out of her life. Thursday came and went the same way. She was still playing the part, still laughing at the right times, still offering soft touches at breakfast, still asking about my day. And I kept answering with short, practiced lines. Everything became theater. Her pretending she hadn't betrayed me pretending I hadn't noticed. But beneath the surface, I was thinking, not emotionally, logically, carefully. If she was willing to lie to my face, without blinking, without guilt, what else could she lie about? How long had this been going on? How many times had I been asleep in our bed while she texted someone else under the covers? Was it just this one man? Was there someone before him? I didn't ask. Not yet. Not because I didn't want to know, but because I was afraid of how much I already did. That weekend, we went grocery shopping together. Another performance. She reached for my hand in the cereal aisle. I let her hold it. We probably looked like a couple very much in love. But there was a tension in her grip. A small, involuntary tremor, like she could feel the lie pressing through her fingers. On Sunday, she suggested we go out for brunch. She picked a little cafe she said reminded her of our early dates. We sat outside, under an awning, while rain pattered gently around us. She smiled across the table, sipped her coffee, and said, "It's nice, just being here with you." And maybe, in that moment, she believed it. But I didn't. Not anymore. It's remarkable how people assume that because you're quiet, you're unaware. Rachel moved through the next few days as if nothing had shifted. Her patterns returned to normal. Calls taken outside. Phones always face down. Sudden errands that couldn't wait. She smiled more. Touched me more. She was trying. I don't know if it was guilt, fear, or pity, but I let her try. On Wednesday, I came home earlier than usual. The house was empty, her car gone. She hadn't mentioned plans. I didn't text. I just waited. I made coffee, sat by the window, watched the street. At 6:41 p.m., her car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out, holding a brown paper bag from a bakery she rarely visited, one across town. She entered with a practiced smile. "Picked up those lemon tarts you like." I thanked her, took one, and bit into it. It tasted good. Sweet. Tart. Hollow. She looked relieved that I hadn't asked where she'd been. And I didn't. Because I already knew. Later, while she showered, I sat on the edge of the bed and glanced at her purse, which she'd left on the dresser for the first time in weeks. Her phone peeked out. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to become that man, desperate, prying. Besides, I didn't need proof anymore. The evidence was in the way she avoided my gaze when she thought I was watching. In how she laughed too hard when I said something mildly funny. In how she suddenly wanted to cook for me again. Like a woman trying to outrun her own guilt. On Thursday night, she came into the living room wearing the green dress I once told her made her look like summer itself. She hadn't worn it in over a year. "I thought we could go out," she said. "Dinner?" "Sure," I replied, setting down my book. We went to a quiet Italian place we hadn't visited in a while. The kind with candles on the table and soft jazz leaking through the walls. She talked about work. A new intern. Her boss's divorce. I listened. She asked about school. I told her about a student who had misquoted Orwell in a paper about surveillance. He wrote, "All secrets are equal, but some secrets are more equal than others," I said with a small smile. She laughed, almost choking on her wine. "He didn't." I nodded. "He did." She laughed again, and for a moment, it felt real. But I wasn't laughing, because I couldn't stop thinking about that sentence. Some secrets are more equal than others. That night, as we got home, she looked at me like she wanted to say something. Her keys lingered in the door. Her fingers trembled just slightly. "Mike," she said, almost a whisper. I waited, but she didn't speak. She just shook her head and walked inside. I didn't follow right away. I stood on the porch and looked up at the sky. The stars were faint behind a sheet of clouds. When I finally entered the house, she was in the kitchen, rinsing her wine glass. "I'm going to bed," she said softly. "You coming?" "In a bit," I said. She kissed my cheek. I didn't return it. I watched her walk down the hall, her silhouette outlined by the hallway light, until she disappeared. And in that moment, I knew. She was waiting for me to accuse her. But I wasn't going to give her that. Not yet. Because I wasn't done watching. And she wasn't done lying. Saturday morning came with gray skies and a light drizzle tapping against the window. Rachel stood in front of the closet, considering outfits like it mattered. She reached for a black blouse I'd seen her wear only once, years ago, at a wedding. Now she wore it on quiet weekends and days she didn't want to be noticed. "Do we have plans?" I asked. She froze for a beat too long. "Just brunch with Julia, girls from work." I nodded slowly. "That sounds nice." Her eyes flicked toward me, searching for something. Guilt? Permission? I couldn't tell. I gave her neither. She left an hour later. I waited 5 minutes, then got in my car. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. I drove instead to Greg's house. He greeted me with that same calm, grounded presence I had relied on for years. We didn't exchange pleasantries. "She's with him now," I said plainly. He nodded once. I figured. I sat on his porch for a long time, watching the wind bend the trees in his yard. When I finally stood, he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. At home, I cleaned. Not in anger, just out of necessity. I boxed up some old clothes, gathered papers, sorted books. As I worked, I found an old photo of Rachel and me on a hike from 8 years ago, before marriage dulled our edges. Her eyes were full of life, sun in her smile, hand gripping mine like I was her whole world. I set the photo down. When she returned that afternoon, her cheeks were flushed, hair wind-swept, smile lazy and unbothered. "Julia says hi," she offered. I just nodded. She set her purse down and moved toward the kitchen. Then she stopped, turned. "You've been quiet lately." I looked up from the book I hadn't been reading. "Have I?" She nodded. "Is something wrong?" I met her eyes then, fully, steadily, for the first time in weeks. "Yes," I said. Her smile faltered. "What is it?" "You lied to me." The words weren't loud. They weren't angry, but they landed with weight. She took half a step back, as if the air had thinned. "I don't know what you mean," she said. I stood, walked to the kitchen counter, and pulled out a printed receipt from my coat pocket. "Wine bar. Tuesday. 2 glasses of rose. 1 cheese plate." Her name was on the reservation. She stared at it for a long moment. Her mouth parted, but no words came. "You weren't with a vendor," I continued. "You weren't at work late. And you weren't with Julia today." Her face changed slowly, like someone realizing a dream was ending. "I can explain," she whispered. "I'm sure you can," I said. "But don't." "Mike, I didn't mean for me to find out." I interrupted. She winced. I let the silence hold. Let it stretch. "Is it serious?" I finally asked. She didn't answer. "That's all I want to know. Not excuses. Not tears. Just the truth." Rachel swallowed hard. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. "Not yet." "Yes," she said. The word fell between us like a stone into still water. "How long?" 6 months. Not a pause. Not hesitation. She had rehearsed the timeline. She was ready. "I see." I turned, walked to the living room window. The rain had started again, heavier now. "I didn't plan it," she said behind me. "It just happened." I felt alone. "You were." "No," I said sharply. "You don't get to rewrite the history." She flinched. "I loved you. I still might. But you stepped out. You made that choice. And you kept making it. I didn't know how to stop. You didn't want to." She didn't deny it. After a moment, she moved toward me. "Mike, I'm sorry. I truly am." "I believe you," I said. But it doesn't matter. What are you going to do? I turned to face her. I haven't decided. But I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to throw things. I'm going to do what you didn't. Think clearly. She nodded slowly, as if accepting a verdict before it was spoken. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, she said. Good. She walked down the hallway. Her steps were slow, measured, and when she disappeared behind the door, I sat on the couch, folded my hands, and stared into the quiet. The truth was out, and now the real decisions would begin. The guest room door stayed closed for 2 days. Rachel emerged for coffee in the mornings, walked silently through the kitchen, and vanished again. No conversations. No explanations. We moved around each other like coworkers after a bad office party, polite, strained, pretending nothing had happened while everything was still raw. She made no mention of the man, and I didn't ask. By Monday morning, I had made a list, quietly, deliberately, not of her wrongs, but of what needed to be done. A mental inventory of the separation. Bank accounts, house deed, subscriptions, storage unit, spare keys. I called a lawyer on my lunch break, asked for a consultation. No rush in my voice, no bitterness, just clarity. When I got home, Rachel was seated at the dining table, a notepad open in front of her. She looked up when I entered. She hadn't touched dinner. I made a list too, she said quietly. I didn't ask of what. She pushed the notepad forward. Things I'll take. Things I'll leave. I scanned the page briefly. Books, clothes, a painting from the hallway, some kitchenware. She had drawn a line down the center, her handwriting neat and contained. I nodded. Fair. There was a moment, brief but visible, when she looked like she wanted to say more. Maybe she thought about reaching across the table. Maybe she imagined some final plea. But nothing came. Instead, she stood and walked to the kitchen. She rinsed her glass, wiped the counter. Later that night, I heard her crying in the guest room. Not loud, just enough to know it was real. And I'll admit, I sat outside the door for a minute, listening. Not to gloat, not to feed some wounded pride, but because part of me still remembered how to care. I didn't knock. By Thursday, she started packing. Carefully, respectfully. She didn't tear drawers open or slam closets shut. Just moved methodically, folding things into boxes and labeling them with a black marker. At dinner, we sat across from each other with takeout between us. Pad thai again. No wine. No jokes. I'll go stay with my sister for a bit, she said. I nodded. That makes sense. She looked up from her food. Are you going to tell people? Eventually, I said. When I know what to say. She nodded. Same. Another silence passed, but it wasn't sharp. Just tired. I didn't want to fall in love with him, she said softly. I know, I replied. She blinked. You do? I nodded. You didn't fall. You walked. That shut the conversation down. She stood, carried her plate to the sink, and didn't look back. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. On Friday, I left work early and met with the lawyer. He listened, asked questions, typed notes. No kids, I said. No contest. And the house. She can leave. I'll refinance. He nodded. Cleanest path. I signed the initial documents that evening, brought them home, and left them on the dining table. Rachel saw them. She didn't ask anything. She just looked at me, her eyes red, then picked up the pen. She signed. No drama. Just silence. That weekend, she moved out. No moving van. Just 3 trips in her car. When she was done, she stood in the doorway for a long time, hand on the frame, eyes on the floor. Goodbye, Mike, she said. Goodbye, Rachel. She nodded, then stepped outside. The door clicked shut. I didn't follow. The house was quieter than it had ever been. Not the strained silence we had lived with for weeks, the real kind. The kind that wraps around furniture, settles into the corners, and waits for you to notice how much space someone used to fill. Her shoes were gone from the entryway. Her perfume no longer lingered in the bathroom. Even the faint smell of her shampoo had faded from the pillow in the guest room. She had taken her presents with her, but she'd left the scarf. The same one she wore the day I made my decision. It was draped over the back of a chair like it had simply forgotten to leave. I didn't move it. I didn't throw it away. I just let it stay there. Maybe as a reminder. The days that followed were uneventful in a way I hadn't felt in years. I went to work, taught my classes, came home, cooked, read, slept. Everything was measured, balanced, even peaceful. Greg called me that Sunday. How's it feel? He asked. I thought for a moment. Clean. He chuckled. Not the word I expected. It's not anger anymore, I said. It's not pain. It's just clarity. That's something. We talked for a while. About old things. Safe things. But before we hung up, he said, you handled this the only way it should have been handled. I don't know many who could. I appreciated that. I didn't need validation, but hearing it helped. He had been the one who pulled the pin from the grenade. I had been the one to decide where it landed. On Wednesday, I received a letter in the mail. Rachel's handwriting on the envelope. Inside, a single sheet. Mike, you don't owe me anything, least of all your silence. But I want to say thank you for not humiliating me, for not yelling, for letting me walk out with some kind of dignity. I will regret what I did for a long time. Not just because it ended us, but because I see now what I gave up. You deserved better than my half-hearted honesty. I hope someday you find someone who gives you what I couldn't. Not just loyalty, but openness. I thought I knew what I wanted. But I realize now, I never gave what I expected in return. You were always more patient than I deserved. Thank you for not becoming cruel. R. I folded the letter once and slid it back into the envelope. I didn't feel vindicated. Just settled. The kind of closure that doesn't come with fanfare. Quiet. Complete. That night, I finally moved the scarf. I folded it neatly, placed it in a drawer with a few other things she had left behind. I wasn't holding on to them. I just wasn't ready to throw them away. Yet, I sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey. The sky was clear. I looked up, watching the stars blink into existence one by one. Rachel had broken something. But she hadn't broken me. She had simply shown me a truth I wasn't ready to see until it was too obvious to ignore. Now, I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was free.